Chapter 1. It should have been darker. My foot crunched a fallen brown leaf as I left the school and headed toward an empty student parking lot. It was close to 8 at night, which meant my white Jeep sat alone, sun reflecting off it at low angles. There was something odd about having the light over my shoulder just before it began its descent into darkness. The fall air bit at my heels and cheeks, prompting me to quicken my pace as I drew closer to the Jeep and tugged open the heavy door. My backpack slid off my shoulder as I tossed it into the passenger seat and collapsed, exhausted from filing paperwork for different classes. I was an office aide at my high school, which meant I had a responsibility to assist. It was still only the second week of classes, and I'd been filing student schedules, requests for class changes, and the like for hours. I hadn't signed up for helping after school, though, and vowed then and there to never do it again. I shook my head at the memory of all the forms I'd dealt with that day and reached forward to start the Jeep. All I wanted now was to listen to some music and enjoy a peaceful drive back home. Just as my fingers barely brushed against the volume dial, an ear-splitting screech shot through the air, and I recoiled in shock, my head shooting upward. Anticipation took hold of my heart. I waited in silence for it to come again. Maybe I'd imagined it, or more realistically, I hoped I'd imagined it. I wasn't equipped for this kind of situation, and my eyes skimmed my car for anything I could use just in case I wasn't hallucinating. "Help!" The desperate, distant scream shook me into motion, and I bolted up, scrambling for the phone in my car's cup holder. I knew I should have called the police, but there had been a few incidents on the news that didn't necessarily showcase their abilities, so I dialed someone I trusted. "Hello?" a deep voice answered. My heart was thumping so loudly I was sure he could hear it. "Thank God," I almost gasped. "Baylor, I'm in the parking lot at school and no one else is here, but I heard a scream and then someone yell for help and I want to go check." "Stop," my older brother said sternly. Even from miles away at college, he could still command and I'd listen. "Call the police and get out of there. It's not safe." "What if I call them and it's too late? I need to go over there now, at least to check, or I won't be able to sleep tonight. I thought I'd ask you to stay on the line with me. You know, just in case." "Are you wearing a hoodie?" he asked finally. "Cover your face as much as you can." Luckily, I had a spare one in the car. My arms trembled as I hurriedly threw it on and leapt out of the Jeep. Adrenaline coursed through my blood like I'd never felt before. I'd learned about this before, the fight-or-flight response, but I never thought I'd experience it so vividly. I crept in the direction of the noise, my breathing hitched, unconsciously treading on the balls of my feet. When I turned the corner, it was still. The football field looked empty, but my hands still quivered. "Do you see anything?" Baylor asked quietly. His voice was calm. I couldn't necessarily say his virtual presence was soothing, but it was still better than being alone. As my lips formed the shape of no, a sudden movement attracted my gaze. A black figure loomed at the top of the bleachers before noticing my position and flinching. Sudden panic propelled my body forward in a desperate attempt to get a better look, but the man ducked down behind the bleachers, scurrying past the fence and out of my sight. "I just saw someone," I started, determined to get another glance as I stepped forward. Then all my courage vanished. I felt it against my shoe, something warm, wet. "Baylor," I whispered, my eyes shut tight as I willed my lips not to tremble. "What? What happened?" I didn't want to look. I didn't know what it was, but the guesses swarming my mind were enough to make me hesitate. Yet I knew I had to, and with a daring I didn't typically possess, my eyes slowly swept the bleachers, then the cement, and finally the puddle of blood mixed in a whirlpool of soaked blonde hair. My Jeep was no longer alone. Red and blue lights flashed against the now consuming dark as Colorado police strolled around the scene of Westwood High. I crossed my arms around my chest, relying on my own warmth as I shrank into a body that shook. "Did you find him?" I asked again as a man in a uniform walked past. I stood up from where I'd been leaning on the hood of my car. While being surrounded by the authorities wasn't necessarily the most comfortable situation ever, I needed answers. The guy who was on the stairs. He didn't seem to hear me. Hello? His eyes almost rolled as he turned in my direction. No. No, you didn't find him? I asked for clarification. We didn't find him, and we probably won't, but we're doing a sweep of the area just in case you really did see someone. What? I gawked at him. What do you mean, really did see someone? You think I made it up? Look, he said, shadows outlining his glum face. We got your report and all your information. Thank you for cooperating, but you should head home. It's late and there's nothing else you can do. We have it under control. Wait, I started, but he was already tilting a hat over his eyes and turning away. I'm not lying, wait! I tried countless others, asking them the same questions about the victim and the murderer, but all I got were impassive looks and short replies. My blood boiled as I finally sank into my car and slammed the door shut. I don't get it, I fumed, my hand clutching a silver fork. My parents sat across from me, both chasing their pasta around in an uncomfortable silence. They said their early investigation indicates she tripped and fell, but I literally told them what I saw. Why don't they believe me? Honey, my mom started, finally meeting my gaze. Her irises were a smoky gray with smile creases sharpening the edges of her eyes. I'd always been told I looked like her, as we shared the same color eyes and full lips, but it was only recently that I'd begun to see the resemblance. I know tonight was rough, and I'm sorry you had to experience any of it, but we should be thankful they don't consider you a suspect, right? She looked helplessly at my father, who had just raised a bite of spaghetti toward his mouth. He lowered it and let out an awkward cough. Right. I mean, it's lucky they caught you on the surveillance cameras in the school and the parking lot. It could have gone a lot worse than it did. Thankfully, you've always been lucky, Bryn. Lucky? They thought the fact that I'd stumbled upon a murderer and watched as he got away was lucky. What aren't you guys understanding? Do you think I just made it up too? I accused, anger biting at my words. No, that's not it, my mom said hastily. She set her fork down and sighed. Your dad and I have something to tell you, and we would have told you earlier, but the decision was very last minute. It's just, well, the timing couldn't be worse. What? I asked. This was why they'd waited until I got home to have dinner. A hole began to form in the pit of my stomach as I waited for them to tell me their news. Well, she started, her eyes drifting aimlessly before coming back to me. We're going on a business trip. I'm not exactly sure how long it'll be, but we were told it could last at least a month, maybe more. Her expression pleaded with me. I'm so sorry, honey. We didn't think something like this would happen, and we tried to reschedule, but it was too late. My parents worked in programming. I knew they used to do freelance stuff until Baylor and I came along, but now they worked for a corporation in the city that focused on creating websites and gathering intel. Trips weren't uncommon in their line of business, but I still didn't like it. Why did they have to leave now of all times? It was like the fates were laughing at me. Where are you guys going? California, my dad said. The circles under his eyes had gotten darker lately, and both my parents had hair that was starting to gray. My hair was a similar shade of brown to theirs, muted, dark, so sometimes I wondered if I'd look like them as I approached their age. It was hard watching as they got older, and having them so far away always made me feel uneasy. I'd never really been left alone for long periods of time, mostly because Baylor would stay with me if they went on vacation by themselves. As a junior in high school, I didn't get too many opportunities for independence, but right now, it wasn't something I wanted. I was close with my parents, and although I didn't want to admit it, I felt vulnerable after what had just happened, and now they were leaving. You really have to go? I asked in a faint voice. I didn't want them to, but it felt like I didn't have a choice. Unfortunately, my dad said, grasping my hand from across the table. His skin felt soft, fragile, and I gripped it tight. Baylor will come up from school on the weekends to keep you company. We know you've missed him since he started college, so hopefully you guys can use this time to catch up. His smile didn't reach his eyes, but I could appreciate the forced optimism.